Okay, so yes, this video is long overdue. I know I promised my review of the T-Slim X2 like months ago, but honestly, just shortly after making that video, I got called to be on a study for that would involve me using the 780G. And honestly, I thought that just comparing the two would be a much more interesting video than just a straight up review of the T-Slim X2. These two are direct competitors, and there's a lot of competition, and honestly, it's really exciting because Minimed has been dominant for so long, and they're starting to see not an insignificant amount of users kind of transitioning over to T-Slim. So it'd be interesting to see what their response was. And just a little bit about this trial that I was on. So I was using the 780G hardware and the algorithm with the Guardian Sensor 3. So it's everything that the 780G users at the end of this year are going to get. I didn't get to use any of the apps or anything like that, but I thought it still gave me a pretty good idea of it. So first, let's talk about the hardware. So the T-Slim X2 has a really modern design. It's got a touchscreen with a home button off to the side. It looks very modern and honestly could kind of blend in as kind of like an old outdated cell phone. Whereas the 780G uses the same hardware as the 670G. You know, looks identical. And it's not bad, but it definitely does look a little dated and definitely looks like a piece of medical equipment. This is the T-Slim X2 definitely blends in a little bit more, and that's probably widely considered to be a good thing. You know, for me, growing up as a kid, I always kept my insulin pump in my pocket. I was worried people would see it and ask me about it. I was a really shy kid growing up, and I just hated having to explain that I was type 1 diabetic, why I had to wear it. So I think just the fact that the T-Slim blends in is a pretty big advantage for it. The touchscreen, honestly, though, is not that big of a deal, as much as I thought it would be. You know, most of these menus are calibrated and you kind of scroll through them the same way that you would as if you actually had physical buttons. The only real big advantage that it has is when you're typing in like a blood sugar or the amount of carbs. You know, like a blood sugar like 158, so much easier to type 158 than to type or to scroll up all the way up to 158 from 100 or wherever the starting number is. But that being said, the 780G does have some advantages too. So going back to the T-Slim, to get a clip on it, you have to wear this case. I don't know if you guys can quite see that. I don't want to unhook. More on that later. But this little like clip right here, I don't know if mine's damaged or if it came that way. I honestly don't remember, but it's not a very sturdy clip and it's not very tight. Whereas the 780G clip is spring loaded. And I mean, let's just say that like I would feel comfortable wearing the 780G on my waist as I was going on a run. Definitely do not feel that way about the T-Slim X2. Both pumps have good quality colored screens. Obviously, the T-Slim's is bigger because it's a touchscreen, but both, you know, look good, are bright enough that you can see it in direct sunlight, and both use colors in an effective way to display information. So now I'm going to start talking about the parts that are actually going to affect people's healthcare, and I really just want to reemphasize that. You know, I'm expressing my own opinion. This is far from medical advice. I am not a doctor. I'm nowhere near a doctor. So please do not take my advice for healthcare treatments. Always discuss things with your doctor and do not get medical advice from some dude on YouTube. So next up, let's talk about cartridge and infusion set options. And just based on sheer number of options available, Medtronic takes the cake. But the real question is do the lack of options on the T-Slim really hurt it? For me, that was kind of one of the bigger inhibitors, was that I've used quicksets since I've been a diabetic, and Tandem just does not offer an equivalent to a quickset. So I had to transition into the AutoSoft 90, which, if you've ever used it, is very, very similar to the Mio 90s. You might be different than me, but for me, this was not a big deal. Like I made it a way bigger deal in my head going in than it needed to be. The AutoSoft 90 has been great so far, but really, just you can never have too many options. So I got to give it to Minimed on this, and I got to give them the reservoirs as well, because their reservoir system is incredibly simple. It's just one piece. It's the cartridge and the needle with a little tube. Uh, but T-Slim's is incredibly more complicated. It's this three-part system. So you got a syringe with the needle separate, and then you got the cartridge itself, and then you got to put the needle on the syringe and then fill it up with insulin and then inject it into the cartridge. And frankly, it's overcomplicated. I'm sure that they had a reason to do it, but Minimeds is just so simple. And I never use this, and I'm not recommending that you do, but with the Minimed, it's very easy to just reuse the reservoir. It's good to know you can do it in a pinch. Some people do it for cost savings. I know that Minimed has had some problems with like the motors sticking out too far and it dosing people too much insulin. And, maybe that's kind of the motivation between Tandem using this more complicated system. But Minimeds is just, I got to give it to them based on it just being one piece and being a lot less complicated, and the reusability factor if you need to. Again, not recommending that you do. Next up is the CGM aspect of it, and honestly, I feel like this is a good reason why so many people are moving over to Tandem, is because the Dexcom is just great. But first, let's talk about the Guardian Sensor 3. For 670G users, you'll be happy to know that it has gotten better. It's gotten to the point where you don't need to verify with a finger stick before you can correct on a high. So before on the 670G, if your sensor said you were 220G, technically under FDA rules, you had to test your blood sugar with a finger stick to confirm you were really that high before you could give yourself insulin to correct. This obviously made it so that it kind of auto-correct. That is now gone. If your sensor reads 220, you can correct that just like you're at 220. You do still need to calibrate twice a day, every 12 hours. But the fact that you don't need to confirm every time that you're doing a correction means that truly you do only need to test your blood sugar twice a day, which, again, is a big improvement over what was there. Fun fact for you, not needing to confirm with a finger stick it's a term called non-adjunctive use. So having to test your blood sugar 2 times a day, Bluetooth to share your results with your family, and 7-day wear time. What does that sound like to you? To me, that sounds like the Dexcom G5, which released in 2015. I'm not sure as far as MARD, because they haven't really released it for the Guardian Sensor 3 with this new algorithm. But honestly, it sounds to me like Minimed's about 6 years behind Dexcom. And honestly, like for me, and again, it might be different for other people, and for some people, the Guardian sensor may be your best option. It might be the most accurate for you. It might be the most comfortable. I don't know. But for me, the Guardian Sensor 3 would last probably on average 4, maybe 5 days. It was very rare that I got a whole 7 days out of a sensor. And it just wasn't very accurate, maybe, and I've given this some thought. Maybe it's because I was testing my blood sugar that I actually realized how inaccurate it was. So like, for example, 130 and 110 feel the same. So if I'm really 110, my meter's reading my CGM is reading 130. I'm not going to question it unless I'm testing my blood sugar and I see that it's 110. Then I'm like, oh, maybe the sensor isn't as accurate as I thought. With the Dexcom, I just never test my blood sugar unless I feel off. So as long as it matches what I'm feeling, which is, a pretty big range, then I'm just not knowing. So maybe ignorance is kind of bliss. But when I'm testing all the time and I'm saying that, I'm 30, 40 off on the Guardian Sensor 3, it really, I guess, just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And for me, the Dexcom G6 has just been great. I almost always get the full 10 days out of it. And it always matches how I feel. There's like maybe 2 times a month where I'll be like, this doesn't quite feel right. I'll test and it will be a little bit off, but those are super rare, and it's always towards like the end of the sensor. So just the fact that the T-Slim integrates with the Dexcom G6 is just such a huge advantage for me. But I did realize after I made my last video that maybe testing your blood sugar isn't as big of an inconvenience as I was making it out to me. Every time that I've used the Minimed 670G or the 780G system, I've had to use one specific tester just so that they could have all the results in one place and I can upload those results. But for most people, that's not the case. I would complain that I needed to lug that test around everywhere, and if I forgot it, I just didn't know. I didn't have readings from my CGM until I got home and tested it. For most people, that's just not the case. They can have more than one tester. They can have a tester at home for when they wake up in the morning and go to bed. They can have a tester at the office or in their car. So I probably made that a bigger deal than it needed to be, but honestly, I'd just rather not test my blood sugar if I don't have to. So Dexcom G6, definitely a huge win for me and a major advantage. But the CGM is really only half the story. The other half is what you do with that data. So on one side we got Minimed with auto mode, and the other side we got Tandem with Control IQ. And honestly, this surprised me, but I far prefer Minimed's auto mode. And I really don't know the whole story. Maybe Minimed got more leeway with the FDA on what they were allowed to do because blood sugars were being confirmed with finger sticks and being calibrated twice a day. But really the big differentiator for me is that you could adjust the insulin on board time on the auto mode side, whereas you can't on the Control IQ side. Control IQ, you're set at insulin being active for 5 hours, and you just cannot change that. On Minimed side, by default, it's set at 4 hours, but you can change it to whatever you want. And so this trial I'm on, they actually had computer-generated recommendations for me, and that's really what they were testing is, if these recommendations were good, and hopefully in the future that I would just automatically apply these recommendations. And one of the big things that they would always change would be the carb ratio and the insulin on board time. And for me, they got it to the point where my insulin on board time was actually 2 hours. And that just made such a big difference. And I have never had better control of my blood sugar than when my active insulin time was set at 2 hours. And again, for some other people, that might not be a big deal. Maybe you want your active insulin time set at 5 hours, but the fact that they don't let you change that is just so frustrating to me, because for me, my ideal active insulin time is nowhere near 5 hours. It's less than half of that. And it's just been frustrating that they're not letting me choose that. That they think that they know best, and that me and my doctors can't make that decision for myself. And again, maybe that's the way the FDA made it, but it's very frustrating. So when I was on auto mode, in nighttime for me is really how you can tell how good the algorithm is. When I was in auto mode, straight 110 all throughout the night, little tiny dips on that. Whereas on the Control IQ side, I'm waking up at 170, even though I didn't eat anything for 4 hours before bed. And I'm kind of wiggling all throughout the night, and it just, or flatline at 170, and it just doesn't get me down. And it's really frustrating because I haven't eaten anything like 4 hours before bed. So we're talking like 12 hours since I've had any carbs, and just it's not able to correct aggressively enough. And I think that a big reason is because it's stuck at 5 hours of insulin on board time. And then finally, we kind of just have the miscellaneous category. And I kind of talked about this in my video explaining why I'm switching to Tandem, which, by the way, if you haven't seen that, put a link up here and in the description. But kind of just, they took different approaches with the battery. So Minimed kept just a AA battery. Lasts about, a month. And it's just super easy. You can buy it just at a gas station, Walmart, whatever. You just twist the top, put in a new battery, you're good to go. Tandem took a different approach. It's got a lithium-ion battery built in, which saves costs. You don't need to buy batteries, and it's good for the environment. Less waste. But this built-in lithium-ion battery does not last that long. You can I typically get 5 days on a full charge. It really just does require just a change of habit. For me, and this is what the Tandem rep recommended, is just that when I shower, I just plug the pump in, let it charge for that 15 minutes, and you're good to go. As long as you do that every day, your pump will never run out. It just uses any micro USB cable. So if you're worried about going on a trip and losing it, you can find those at pretty much any gas station or Walmart or Best Buy. But whatever you do not let that pump die, because I learned that the hard way. It was the first week, and I was still kind of getting used to charging it. I forgot to charge it the last 2 days. And I was sitting in a movie theater, and I thought it'd be good enough to get me through the movie. It wasn't. My pump died. My blood sugar spiked. And when you boot that pump back up, it kind of loses like everything. So like you gotta act like you're putting in a new cartridge, even though you're not. Which side note, Tandem, when you're filling your reservoir, does not let you fill less than 10 units. So even though my tubing was already primed and everything, I had to waste 10 units of insulin. It was a very frustrating thing, but I learned very quickly to never let that happen again. But something that hit me about this, and something that maybe not a lot of people have considered, is that insurance companies are starting less and less to just buy new pumps because the old one is out of warranty. There has to be something wrong with the old one. I had to prove that something was kind of wrong with my old one before they would buy me the Tandem. But one of the questions that they ask is, do batteries, not last as long? And if you understand how lithium-ion batteries work at all, 4 years down the line, that answer will 100% be yes, my pump is not holding as good of a charge as it used to. So it's kind of got a built-in reason for you to always be able to upgrade if you want to. And so going back to that thing where it always makes you fill 10 units of insulin, that is incredibly annoying, first of all. And again, it just as them being like, we don't trust you to make your own decisions. It's always going to take 10 units of insulin. That's not my only annoyance with the pump. Both pumps have very annoying kind of alarm systems. They're just trying to get your attention, but gosh, both of them vibrate and beep a lot. I would say Minimed more so, but Minimed does have this advantage of kind of this night mode where you can just mute all notifications and just get a good night's sleep. And this is a feature I utilized and frankly loved. I wish that there was some more customizability there, so only mute highs or only like really urgent lows. So it's not waking you up when you're 78, but it's waking you up when you're 58. Tandem, I haven't been able to figure out any kind of quiet time like that. But 100%, my absolute biggest annoyance with any pump I've ever used ever has to be with Tandems. And that's if you hit stop insulin. So like for whatever reason, you take a shower. I take it off when I play basketball and when I shower, obviously. But you take it off, and every 20 minutes, it's going to beep like crazy. And you can't just make it vibrate. It's going to beep. Medtronic, you can make it just vibrate to let you know, hey, I'm not delivering any insulin, no big deal. But Tandem's beeps, and if you don't acknowledge it, it's going to beep every 10 minutes. And oh my gosh, it is so annoying. And I get why they do this. I mean, the pump's job is to deliver you insulin, and it should tell you if it's not doing that. But it's so annoying. So like I'm playing basketball, and just I'm sure everybody that I play with just gets so annoyed because my pump is just beeping all the time. And if it's a long game and I don't acknowledge it, it's beeping every 10 minutes. And there's just no way to silent it or just make it vibrate. Like that beeping is just there. Like even if they had just made it so that this doesn't happen when the pump is plugged in, that would have made it so much better. Because again, they recommend that you do it while you shower. Most people don't shower with their insulin pump on, so they know that insulin is turned off. But like a couple weeks ago, I was super sick. When I'm sick, I'd take baths, so I would just be soaking in the tub. I have my pump plugged in because it's charging, and obviously I'm not going to have my pump plugged in when I'm taking a bath. I take longer baths, and just after 20 minutes, just hearing that beeping just absolutely drove me insane. And I can't think of anything less relaxing than hearing a constant, loud beeping, especially when you got the baby sleeping just down the hall. Nothing could possibly be less relaxing than that. And like, I can't be the only one that takes their insulin pump off and stops insulin when they play basketball or do any other like physical activity. And just the fact that they just didn't like plan for this or give us like any kind of option is really annoying. And I realized that I kind of went on a tangent there, and for some people might not be a big deal. Just for me, it's just so annoying. But again, with the Tandem, a big advantage is, in the future, insulin on board and my issues with the annoying beeping, those can all be fixed with just a quick software update. Minimed has that option too, but the fact that you only get software updates for a year really limits the amount of software updates and changes that you'll get, because honestly, a year is not enough time for that bit significant of an improvement. One other really big thing to consider is that the Freestyle Libre 3 and the Dexcom G7 are expected to release sometime within the next year. And both of those are significant improvements over the current generation. Both of them are significantly smaller. The Freestyle Libre 3 is expected to have 14-day wear. Dexcom G7 is expected to have 10-day wear, but eventually get 15-day wear. And both are expected to be significantly cheaper. Whereas the Minimed, you're probably stuck with the Guardian Sensor 3 if you go with the 780G. At least if you want to use the native kind of Control IQ auto mode software on the pump. The big caveat there is that Tidepool maybe sometime will eventually release, and Minimed has come out and confirmed that the 780G will work with that. So if you are a big Dexcom fan, there is hope that it will someday work with the 780G. And for me, honestly, that is kind of the perfect solution. I love the Minimed pump, but I hate the sensor. And we don't know a lot about the Tidepool loop. Maybe they won't give you the option to adjust active insulin time either, or maybe they'll have some other frustrating limitations. But there is hope that maybe the Dexcom G7 and the 780G can work together, and the software will be awesome. And honestly, that's kind of my perfect solution right here. So guess bottom line is which pump would I recommend? And again, this is my own personal opinion. The way you treat and manage your diabetes is drastically different than mine. This is just what I would do in this situation. I'm not your doctor. But like, say your pump is out of warranty right now, or will be shortly. Hopefully you have a backup pump, or your doctor has a backup pump at the office that you could borrow if you're in a pinch. But just because your pump is out of warranty does not mean that it's broken. It'll continue to function. So if I was in that situation, I would just wait. If you've hit your deductible, your max out of pocket, that's still going to be the case later this year. I would wait it out. Wait to see what the Freestyle Libre 3 and the Dexcom G7 have to offer. I would try those out. And I would wait to see what happens with Tidepool. If the Freestyle Libre 3 or the Dexcom G7 are just, godsends to you, then great. You're probably going to want to go with Tandem because it works natively with those. Unless, if the Tidepool comes out and it doesn't have any big limitations or high costs or it just works, then I would go with the 780G paired with the Freestyle Libre 3 or G7. But honestly, like if you like Minimed and you've used the Guardian Center 3 and it's working for you, then there's no reason not to upgrade to the 780G because it's the same but better. So I guess if I was in your situation where I was looking for a pump this year, I would just hold off. I would just wait. I wouldn't switch over just yet. I would see what's going on with Tidepool. Right now, the Tandem is a good option, and there's a reason that so many people are switching over. And my doctor told me I've never had anybody switch to Tandem and tell me that they regret it. And I wouldn't say I regret it. There's definitely some frustrations. Granted, there were some frustrations on the Minimed side as well. But it's far from a perfect option. And just knowing that the perfect option may be down the road, I think it's worth waiting for. But that being said, if you don't have a backup pump and the idea of not having a pump that's in warranty just absolutely terrifies you, I don't think that you'd regret switching to the Tandem. But that's a discussion to have with your doctor. And this has just been my own experience. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Just leave them down low. But yeah, that's been my thoughts so far. If you guys, again, have any questions, just leave them down below. Please subscribe. I know every YouTuber on the planet is saying that. There's a reason. Channels with more subscribers get pushed. And this video in particular, to get it pushed, please just hit the like button. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.